everybody, this is Tyler here once again from the Character Workshop, where it's basically going to be another 142 years, I believe, until the events of this story actually happen. So, continuing on with Season 2 of Classic Doctor Who, we're going to be talking about the second story of the season, and overall the 10th story of Doctor Who, the Dalek Invasion of Earth. Now, this is the first story for a couple reasons. First of all, it's the first Doctor Who story to have a returning villain come in, aka the Daleks, of course. And it was also the first Doctor Who story to have one of the companions actually leave the show. So without further ado, let's get started talking about the plot. So the story starts off with the Doctor and the crew landing what they believe to be it's London, but it's in ruins, and throughout the story they find out that there's like almost no sound in London whatsoever. There's no sound of water rushing or traffic. No sound at all. And while investigating the area, the Doctor and Ian, of course, go through, warehouse to, figure out, like, what's going on. They eventually find a dead body of somebody, who happened to have, like, a weird metal thing on his head. And afterwards, they get out of the warehouse, and eventually they stumble upon more of them, which is actually, they're all alive. And then, as they were being confronted by these, like, robotic men-looking people, a Dalek actually rises from the river, and then they take the Doctor and Ian prisoner on board their saucer. And of course, Barbara and Susan ended up with, a resistance force of, like, some of the surviving humans in London, who explained that the Daleks have invaded Earth in the aftermath of a meteorite bombardment, which was 10 years before the events of the story. And while Barbara and Susan were with the Resistance Force, they had plans on trying to assault the Daleks, with their leader being a scientist on wheels by the name of Dortmund, who created a bomb to destroy the outer casing of the Daleks, which of course are immune to bullets. So Susan, Barbara, and the Resistance, attacked the Daleks using the bombs, but unfortunately they were ineffective. However, one of the Resistance members, David, was able to rescue the Doctor with Susan, while Barbara eventually gets separated from them. Ian, on the other hand, still hides in the saucer as it leaves towards where the Daleks were planning on mining the Earth. Ian, of course, was eventually able to escape. Of course, he eventually hides in the mine and becomes trapped in a capsule that was filled with explosives that the Daleks were planning on putting inside the Earth. Eventually, the Doctor, Susan, and David arrive at the cliffs overlooking the mine, and the Doctor sends David and Susan to interfere with the Daleks' radio signals, while the Doctor himself climbs into the mine. Meanwhile, with Barbara, Dortmund, the scientist that I mentioned earlier, sacrifices himself to the Daleks so that Barbara and his daughter Jenny can escape. They repair an old truck and they head for the mining operations, but unfortunately they were reported to the Daleks when they were trying to seek shelter from two women who were making the clothes for the slave workers. They, of course, were later brought to the Black Dalek and discovered that the Daleks were planning on drilling through the Earth's crust to blow out its core. And they were planning on, using the Earth as, some sort of ship to pilot across the universe. The Daleks then imprisoned Barbara and Jenny, and then they set off the explosive-filled capsule in position. But while Ian was still in the mine, he disarms the explosive. The Doctor eventually comes in and frees Barbara and Jenny, and with the radio signals destroyed, the Barbara and the Doctor order the Robomen to destroy the Daleks, and the human slaves rebel, and the Daleks eventually, got destroyed. The bomb basically destroys the entire fleet and causes a volcanic eruption in England, which one of the other members of the Resistance mentioned that, never happens at all in England. And while the Doctor and his crew were getting ready to leave, David, who was, basically, throughout the entire story, David and Susan ended up, kind of having some sort of, bond with each other. David, begs Susan to stay and marry him. Susan, of course, was left in the corner, deciding on, whether she should, stay and marry the love of her life or continue traveling with the Doctor. And, she admits to David that she loves him, but, has to stay with the Doctor. And as she was trying to get into the TARDIS, the Doctor locks the TARDIS, and then says to Susan, a very emotional farewell, and telling her that she deserves a normal life with David, and basically telling Susan that she's like, a grown woman now, and he doesn't need her anymore, and she doesn't need him. And he promises her that he'll return one day, and then he, Ian, and Barbara eventually leave for wherever else they're going. And by the end of the story, Susan drops her TARDIS key and leaves with David to start off a new life. And that was the Dalek Invasion of Earth storyline in a nutshell. Or should I say a Dalek shell, because the Daleks have outer casings, but bad attempt to the joke aside, I really enjoyed the Dalek Invasion of Earth. This was definitely, like, in my opinion, quite a step up from the first Dalek story in Season 1. Obviously, I like the first story, which was set on Skaro. This one was set on Earth, and, honestly, if you were in the shoes or the mindset of any of the people that were living, on Earth in, well, the future year of 2164, but, yeah, that would be kind of scary, getting invaded by, like, a bunch of, like, robotic-looking aliens that are, like, capable of destroying, basically anything they see, and, also using you as, like, just a workforce to, do whatever they want to do. Yeah, it definitely, there's, like, a lot of, like, higher stakes, in the Dalek Invasion of Earth compared to, like, the Daleks, which, that was definitely one of the many highlights of the stories. The cast in the story, of course, is great, everybody in there, is pretty much at their best, I would say. Of course, this is the part of the review where I want to talk about, like, Susan a little bit, and also, she, of course, was the first companion of Doctor Who to leave the show. While I don't think she was as good in this story as she was, in some of the other stories in Season 1, like Aztecs and the Sensorites, yeah, there definitely were still some moments in the story where she, like, kind of freaks out over nothing, like, especially in Episode 4 where, like, David was trying to, like, disarm a bomb that, like, the Robomen were setting up. But yeah, Susan was still, like, not really the best character to, like, watch and listen to at certain points, and, honestly, like, the way her character was portrayed was one of the reasons why Carol Ann Ford decided to leave the show, as she felt that the character, like, was just not developed enough, and, that's why the crew eventually decided to have Susan leave the show, and yeah, Carol Ann Ford, the actress who played Susan, of course, has mentioned multiple times that she was upset about the way they portrayed her character, and also didn't give her enough character growth. I mean, there was, like, glimpses of it in the Sensorites, but, like, they never did anything with it afterwards. They just went back to having her be, like, the damsel in distress character and just the screamer of the show, and, it was really unfortunate, but her departure was, was pretty nice, and a lot of that's mostly thanks to, like, the Doctor's speech to her in the story about, like, there shall be no regrets or no tears. That's definitely one of the, in my opinion, one of the best speeches that the show has had, thus far, besides the speech he made to Barbara in the Aztecs about, like, changing history. And honestly, the other characters in this story are also really good as well. Obviously, Harnell was definitely really good in the role, especially, as I mentioned earlier, with the final speech and, like, various other moments in the story. There was, like, one minor funny moments where, like, the Doctor, David, and Susan were getting attacked by, like, Robomen, and while the Robomen were attacking one of the guys, the Doctor just simply, like, just hits the Robomen with his walking stick. It was kind of funny, but yeah, overall, William Hartnell as the Doctor was definitely really good. Ian and Barbara were, of course, as good as they always are. Not complaining about them at all. I liked them and their interactions with, like, the other, like, Resistance members. But yeah, in terms of the characters, they were definitely pretty good in the story. The Daleks, of course, are, pretty neat. And this story, like, introduced, like a black Dalek, I believe, as, like, the leader of the Daleks, and that was kind of interesting. I don't think, yeah, Doctor Who obviously didn't do that at the time. There wasn't any black Daleks in the first story. At least I'm not mistaken. But yeah, like, everything about this story is pretty good. And it also, one other thing to mention, like, the location footage. This is definitely, like, some of the best location footage I think I've seen in Doctor Who, period. Well, for the time being, of course. Obviously, there'll be some, like, other stories later on, but this is definitely the best by far. All the exterior shots in London are nice, you know, seeing the Daleks, you know, kind of scurrying around, and all that stuff. And especially, I really love the cliffhanger in episode 1 where, like, we see, like, a Dalek just rising out of the river. That was pretty cool. I'm really wondering, like, how they did that, because I don't think those Dalek costumes were waterproof. I'm hoping, like, I don't know if they were cautions or maybe it was just, like, you know, somebody controlling, like, some sort of, like, thing, but, like, I'm really wondering how that was done. I'll have to look into that at some point. So yeah, I really enjoyed the Dalek Invasion of Earth overall. Great story, great characters, awesome location footage, and definitely a huge step up compared to the Daleks from Season 1. And for a lot of those reasons alone, I'm going to give the Dalek Invasion of Earth a rating of a 9 out of 10. So, one other thing I want to mention before I end the episode here, I know I've recently been doing, like, a lot of, like, Doctor Who story reviews recently, and I don't know how many of you actually like these or not. I know these episodes tend to get, like, you know, not as many views as, like, some of my other Came From England episodes, but, I did hear an announcement recently that, like, they're going to be releasing Season 2 of Classic Doctor Who on Blu-ray, so I'm definitely looking forward to that. And because of this, I'm going to make an announcement right here. After Season 6 of A Came From England is over, it'll be going on a break for a while. Season 7's not going to happen until, like, as soon as Season 2 comes out on Blu-ray, because, like, I had, like, for Season 7, I plan on reviewing, like, a couple more Season 2 stories, so, and since it's coming out on Blu-ray, I feel like it's not really worth it just to get the DVDs, you know, to, like, watch these stories, as it's going to be coming out in, like, slightly higher quality, so after Season 6 is over, A Came From England will be on hiatus until, like, further notice. But, of course, after this episode, there's still, like, 2 more episodes left of Season 6, so you still get at least a little bit of A Came From England left, but other than that, after Season 6 is over, most of my focus on the channel will just be, like, some of my other shows. But, I'm sure it's not going to disappoint some of you, but, anyways, with that long outro out of the way, that's about it for this episode. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you did, feel free to give it a like. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more episodes of The Came From England or just mediocre plush content in general. Also, be sure to turn on the notification bell so you get notified each time I upload a new episode of this show or any other show on my channel. Leave a comment down below letting me know what you think. That is about it. This is Tyler from the Character Workshop, signing out. Next time, we are going back into the TARDIS, further on, talking about something that pretty much happened in between the events of the classic series and the modern series.